I thought I would just live an ordinary life. Graduating from college, getting a job, eventually getting married, having kids, and then watching those kids grow. That was how I imagined I would age. My name is Michael. After graduating from a local middle-tier university, I got a job at a well-known real estate agency in the area. There were 3 of us who started working for the company at the same time: James, Sarah, and myself. James was unlike anyone I had known before. He was personable and quickly became a favorite among our senior colleagues. He had a knack for saying the right thing in a conversation to make people happy. Being around him made me feel good, as if I had become a better person myself. Sarah was a charming young girl. It might be a bit of a stretch to call someone who just graduated from college a girl, but she always had a soft, gentle smile that captivated the hearts of our older male colleagues and part-time ladies, who would often say things like, "I wish a girl like you could marry my son. Would you consider becoming my daughter-in-law?" Yet, she handled her work effortlessly. I felt happy whenever Sarah smiled at me, but felt nervous when we were alone together. But as a new employee, I had so much to learn that it was overwhelming. Also, I had to work harder than anyone else because I didn't have any particular strengths. Thus, I had no time for a romantic relationship. After completing 6 months of training at the head office, we were each assigned to different branches within the county. We didn't get to see each other every day like we used to, but we would occasionally get together for drinks or go out on our days off. We celebrated each other's first contracts and went on drives in James's car, and even to an art competition Sarah participated in. I've always enjoyed photography, so I always carried my camera with me on weekends. I accumulated many happy photos of landscapes, the 2 of them smiling, and more. Both of their careers seemed to be going well. James, with his natural conversational skills, seemed to be increasing his contracts, and good things were being said about Sarah as well. However, James's clients seemed to have many inquiries after moving in. But when James spoke with them, they seemed to be satisfied and back off. As for me, I was criticized for spending too much time with each client. It was difficult for me to find balance. My seniors often pointed out, it's impossible to find a property that meets customer needs and expectations. So you have to draw the line somewhere. Once I vented about it when we got together, Sarah said, "But that's what's good about you, Michael. We're often told to put ourselves in others' shoes, but not many can actually do it. I prioritize my own benefits, of course. Well, as an employee, I have to prioritize profits. It's hard because we want to make our clients happy." Sarah was always very kind. It just made me feel better, knowing that there was someone who understood me. James just watched us with a smile. Some time later, rumors about James reached my branch. There had been a lot of complaints from his customers after signing contracts, saying, "This is not what we discussed." While post-contract complaints weren't unusual, it became concerning when they happened so frequently. When I contacted James, he said, "It's fine now. With our branch manager Norman, I apologized to the customers for using potentially misleading words and expressions, and they understood. I'll handle things better next time." His dismissive tone bothered me, and I asked, "Handle things better next time? That's not the point, James. Did you intentionally mislead them? Have you been doing this all along? It's all settled, so it's fine. Stop worrying about others. Just worry about yourself." He retorted and hung up. After that, contacting James personally became awkward. He stopped reaching out to me as well. However, we continued to share information in the group chat that all 3 of us were in, and even went out for drinks a few times when Sarah was available to come along. If James and I saw each other at meetings at the head office, we chat casually. I was feeling lonely, missing our friendship, but as I started interacting more with Sarah and gained confidence in my work with the new people who joined the company, the loneliness faded. Then one day, it all changed suddenly. When I walked into the office that morning, There were weird vibes among the employees. They would return my greetings, but no one would make eye contact with me. Even when I initiated a conversation, they would respond only with what was necessary for work, keeping the conversation to the bare minimum. I wondered what I'd done. The atmosphere was not indicative of casual conversation. I just kept doing my job, not knowing what was going on. Since I couldn't think of any reason, I decided to wait and see. I thought it might be just my imagination, and that everyone would probably return to their usual selves soon. Telling myself that, I just focused on my work. But even after 1 week, and then 2 weeks, everyone's behavior remained the same. I started making small mistakes at work. There was no one to back me up. I hadn't heard from Sarah for a while. In the break room, I was going to make coffee and return to my desk, but for some reason, I just couldn't move. As I stood there, zoning out, Kay, a part-timer in her 30s, walked in. Kay had been friendly to me since I started working at the branch, often talking about her family and her daily life during breaks, with lively expressions. When Kay saw me standing there, she was startled and hesitated, looking unsure whether to enter the break room or leave, her eyes darting around. But she seemed to have come to prepare coffee for a client. Taking a deep breath, she hurried into the break room with her head down and started preparing the coffee. I thought that was my only chance to ask her what was going on. "Hi, Kay, can I ask you something? Why is everyone?" Soon after I opened my mouth, Kay looked at me with frightened eyes and rushed out of the break room, leaving the empty coffee cup on the countertop. Then, a senior colleague came in, gave me a sharp glare, and finished preparing the coffee Kay had started, then left without a word. No one even responded to my greetings anymore. Greetings were fundamental, especially in customer service. I had no idea why that was happening to me. It was obvious that they were avoiding me. I was not being assigned any new clients either. I thought about discussing this with Daniel, the branch manager, but all he said was, "Ask yourself," and that was it. Maybe I should just resign. Or maybe I should just disappear. Everyone's probably sick of the sight of me. Those thoughts started to cross my mind. One day, I was called to the headquarters. When I entered the meeting room, there were President Thompson, James, and an elegantly dressed elderly man. I had never met the elderly man before, but I recognized his face. He was the head of a wealthy family in this region, an important figure for our company, who owned many properties and lands. "Do you understand why you've been called?" President Thompson asked, but I had no idea whatsoever. I asked myself what was going on. "Your colleague, Sarah. You've been stalking her. She's an important young lady entrusted to us by Charles here, and we were asked to take special care of her. You know who Charles is, don't you?" What were you thinking? I haven't done anything wrong. I've been close with Sarah as a colleague, but I've never stalked her. I tried to argue in confusion, but I was so flustered that I couldn't find the right words. James, who had been silent until then, said, "Sarah consulted with me about you. You've been following her and even taking photos without her knowing. I've seen those photos." Despite my denials, no one seemed to listen. "Then show us what's in your briefcase," James demanded. With those words, James picked up the briefcase I had on the floor and dumped its contents onto the table. With a thud, my wallet, my phone, and all my work-related documents fell out. There was also a non-company brown envelope on top of them. From the envelope, a woman's watch and several photos spilled out. The photos showed Sarah walking down the street at night, relaxing at home, and even close-up shots of her legs, some of which were taken through a window of her apartment. Seeing the stuff on the table, Charles stood up, picked up the watch and envelope. And after checking the contents of the envelope, he started trembling and said to President Thompson, "I'll leave the decision to you, but ensure he never approaches Sarah again. She's about to be wed. If her reputation is tarnished because of this, be prepared for consequences that may disadvantage your company." With that, Charles left. I was just standing there, not understanding the situation. President Thompson said, "You are fired. Don't bother coming in tomorrow. Given what Charles has said, you might not be sued, but don't expect to find employment in this industry again. And don't even think about contacting Sarah. If Charles gets serious, you won't be able to live in this area. I can't believe I hired a scumbag like you, but you seemed like a decent young man. Now Sarah says she's resigning too. What a loss. Don't even bother going back to the office to clean up your stuff. Just leave." I went straight home, unable to think about anything. My mother tried to talk to me when I was at home, but I didn't feel like it at all and just stayed in my bedroom. The next day, a courier delivered my personal belongings from the branch office along with my resignation letter, which was just for me to sign. I realized that the letter had already been prepared in advance, and I couldn't help but laugh. Everyone thought I was a creepy stalker. Not a single person believed in me and tried to verify the situation. They all just avoided me. But what about the photos and the watch that came out of my briefcase? The watch seemed to be the same one Sarah had been wearing, and the photos did come out of my briefcase. I didn't see James put anything into it at that time. Could it be that I was going crazy? Did I actually stalk Sarah without any recollection of it? As I pondered, everything seemed inconsequential, so I just signed the resignation letter and sent it back to the company. After that, I had no motivation to do anything and just stayed in my room. Doubting my own memory and recalling the cold stares of those who used to smile at me brightly, I became afraid to go outside. Half a year passed. My parents seemed to want to say something but just watched over me silently. Perhaps rumors had spread, since not even a single friend came to visit me. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual and went to the living room, where no one else was yet awake. I noticed a framed photo on display. It was taken during a family trip to the beach when I was in middle school. On the way back from that trip, I saw a beautiful sunset over the sea from the car and wanted to capture that moment. I asked my mom and dad, "Can I get the camera out?" But it was in the car trunk, and by the time we got around to it, the sea had receded and the sun had set. Afterward, I saved up my allowance and part of my earnings from the part-time job I was doing after I started going to high school. And with some help from my parents, I bought a camera, but I hadn't been back to that sea since. I hadn't touched the camera since that incident. I felt like taking photos might change something. I packed my camera, my wallet, and my phone, which hadn't been turned on for a while, into my backpack and put on my shoes. My hand trembled as I grabbed the doorknob, but when I opened the front door and felt the cool outside air, I stepped forward. Afraid to stop, I just ran all the way to the train station. Since I hadn't been active much, I was out of breath and couldn't go fast. But I was too scared to stop and too scared to meet anyone's gaze, so I kept running with my head down. I reached the station and got on a train. The train going in the opposite direction of the city center was sparsely populated, but I kept staring at my knees the entire time. After changing from train to bus, I arrived at the sea just after noon. I took my camera out of the backpack and tried to capture the sea visible from the bus stop, but I couldn't bring myself to frame a shot. Remembering the time I took photos of James and Sarah with this camera, of the places we went together. I had even brought my camera to company social gatherings. I put the camera away and decided to walk down to the beach. Walking on the sandy beach for the first time in a while was difficult. The beach wasn't very wide enough for swimming, but it took quite a while to walk along the endless stretch of sand. As I walked, I started enjoying it. Before I knew it, the sky turned orange. I wasn't sure how long I was there. I just sat down on the beach. I took out my camera again and took a photo. Suddenly, I couldn't see anything in front of me. The moment I realized I was crying, tears started pouring out uncontrollably. "Are you okay?" I was startled when someone suddenly spoke to me. I turned around to see a young man about my age standing there. You seemed a bit off, so I've been watching you for a while. Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. That was all I managed to say. I hadn't spoken much recently, and I realized I hadn't eaten anything since yesterday. Here, if you like. The young man said, taking a bottle of water and a towel out of his backpack and offering them to me. I felt bad but couldn't resist my thirst, so I accepted the water and drank it all at once. I coughed from drinking too quickly, but it was the most delicious thing I'd had in a long time. The young man introduced himself as Ethan. He lived nearby and sometimes came to take photos of the ocean. Look, if you had gone into the water right in front of me, it would have made it awkward for me to come back here again. But then, going home and hearing the news later on that a man was found dead in the water would have been a terrible start to the day. I was scared to approach you, wondering what to do, but then you started taking photos, so I thought, he might be okay. I won't force you, but do you want to talk about what happened? I might be able to help you, and honestly, I'm curious. Ethan said with a grin. I told Ethan about everything that happened after I started working at the real estate agency. Ethan listened quietly until I finished my story. By the time I finished, it was completely dark. The stars were shining over the sea, and the street lights were bright along the roads. There's a good kebab place a short walk away from here. How about we go eat something? Upon arriving at the kebab shop, the employee who greeted us with a welcome looked surprised when he saw us but quickly went back to his work. I realized I hadn't had my hair cut or shaved for at least half a year. I must have looked quite unkempt. Try their lamb kebab. It's highly recommended, Ethan said, ordering a lamb kebab for himself. I ordered the same stuff. While waiting for our food at the table, Ethan started talking. I think that guy James set you up, but are you thinking of going back to your hometown to clear your name, or do you want to start a new life somewhere else? I thought about my hometown. There were some good times, but I didn't feel like returning there. Actually, the company I work for is hiring. We do food processing and sales. Both departments are short-staffed. I'll talk to HR tomorrow. So in the meantime, get a haircut and prepare your resume. I can lend you clothes too, and stay at my place for a while. Although it was scary to trust someone again, at this point, it felt right to go with the flow, so I decided to accept Ethan's suggestion. The walls of his apartment were decorated with many photos of the ocean. The next day, after giving me directions to a local barber shop, Ethan went to work. Getting a haircut and shaving after half a year felt refreshing. I bought a takeaway on the way back and returned to Ethan's apartment where he was also eating his lunch. Good, you're here. Your job interview is tomorrow. The interview went smoothly, and I was asked to start working from the following month. They even offered me a company-provided accommodation. The same one as Ethan's. Still afraid of engaging with people, I opted for a processing and packaging job. Before starting my new job, I was going to go back to my hometown and spend time with my parents. I needed to speak to them first because, when I left their house, I didn't even tell them where I was going. As I turned my phone on for the first time in a while, it started ringing immediately. My mother, calling out my name and starting to cry, listened to me as I told her I was at a safe place and even found a job. While organizing the few belongings I had at Ethan's place, I noticed my camera was still there. I turned the camera on to see what photos were there. The photos of the sunset of the day I met Ethan at the beach, and the ones I took with James and Sarah. I thought I should delete them all. I was going to do that but forgot all about it. I returned to my hometown and stayed at my parents' for a few weeks. When leaving, I said goodbye to my parents at the doorstep. I didn't have much luggage, and somehow, I didn't want them to see me off at the train station. I walked slowly down the street. It was the same street that I ran on that day. Arriving at the station, I saw two familiar figures from behind. Then I just remembered it was their day off. I was standing frozen in place when the man turned around. Whispering something to the woman standing next to him, he started walking towards me. "Why are you here, still stalking people?" James laughed mockingly. "I'm not a stalker, James. You set me up, didn't you?" Finally caught on. Just as I thought, everything went according to plan. It was so hilarious. "You're really naive, you know. I just followed Sarah around so she'd notice she was being stalked, taking photos of her, and then spreading rumors through a part-timer. It all went so smoothly, and those photos in the watch, I planted them in your briefcase in the morning you were called to the headquarters. But you never noticed. It was just too funny. You know I'm the son of a state legislator, Edward Smith. I wanted to build my own connections for the future. So I thought I'd start by getting close to the local influencers by joining a real estate agency. Turned out to be a dead end, and I regretted it. But then at a party I was helping my dad at, I saw Sarah. Lucky me. She and I are dating now. It's too late for anything you say. Without the evidence, nobody will believe you." Before I could respond, James walked away. Strangely, I didn't feel any anger. The truth was exactly what I had imagined, and it no longer mattered to me as I was leaving it all behind. My new job was going well. Most of the people at the workplace were good folks. The ladies working there were a bit assertive at first, but they knew where to draw the line and never crossed my boundaries. The experienced workers were mostly quiet but patiently taught me everything from scratch. This company offered ready-made meals, the casual ideas the ladies shared during breaks, or the side dishes they brought for lunch, would inspire the company recipe developers to create new items that became popular locally. Then, an actor from this town, who helped our products gain recognition, mentioned them on TV, and now we supply to supermarkets all over the country. Recently, we started having regular development meetings. However, there was one person I found difficult to get along with. A man named Brandon who joined the company around the same time as me. He was brought in to bolster sales team, which was struggling to keep up with the increasing number of customers. He had worked for a major food company and was very aggressive. The first time we met, he immediately said, "You graduated from a university, didn't you? Why are you doing this kind of job?" Since then, I haven't really wanted to interact with him much. But due to staff shortages, I often had to accompany Brandon on sales calls. I had ample product knowledge, so I handled the more complex product questions that Brandon couldn't answer. While pretending to give the younger staff experience, Brandon would say, "Let Michael explain that part," all the while trying to hide the fact that he knew nothing about our products. As soon as we left the client's company, he abruptly said with a dismissive tone, "Can't you make your boss look better? There's a reason why you're stuck working at a food processing factory." I'd become less affected by people's words by then, but it still hurt when someone made disrespectful remarks. And that was coming from Brandon, who worked at the same company. At one point, there was talk of collaborating with the actor who played a key role in making our company's products known to the public. As we delved into the collaboration details, it became necessary for the experienced workers to step forward, but their reticence made it difficult for discussions to progress, so I ended up becoming a key person in the team. Being tasked with overseeing the schedule, finances, and the product itself was a heavy burden for someone as inexperienced as I was. But given the staff shortage, I had no choice but to get the job done despite the overwhelming pressure. Brandon was also involved, but he seemed to be handling the financial discussions on his own. There were discrepancies between the amounts reported and what Brandon was discussing. When I discussed it with Ethan, we decided to gather evidence to confront him. Somehow, Ethan knew the password to Brandon's computer. Wondering if that was really okay, I logged into his computer and quickly found clear evidence of embezzlement. After work, Ethan and I confronted Brandon. "Who's going to believe you, Michael? You're a stalker. Everyone knows that, and you were the one who was overseeing this project. If I say it was all you're doing, everyone will believe it. And this young guy, who's this?" he retorted. Just then, the door to the next room, which we thought was empty, opened, and the President Johnson walked in. That young guy is my son, Ethan. He's told me a lot about you, Michael, and I know you're innocent. Now Brandon, the police will be here soon. So don't go anywhere, the President Johnson said. After some time of turmoil, life settled down again, and I received a parcel from my family. Among the freeze-dried meals and canned food in the parcel, there was a letter addressed to me. It was from Sarah. She apologized for believing James's lies about me being a stalker and for not checking the facts before blaming me. She wanted to meet me and talk, but I planned to decline. That was all in the past for me. When Ethan saw the letter, he said, "Is that the letter from Sarah?" I actually snitched on James to her father, Charles. James was a son of the state legislator Edward Smith, wasn't he? It wasn't hard to put two and two together. And Michael, you left your camera at my place. As soon as I saw the photos in your camera, I knew who they were. I thought Charles should know what sort of person his daughter was going out with. James will be doomed to live a miserable life in your hometown. Poor James. I realized I got the best friend anyone could ever ask for.